Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this week's video, we're going to cover 4 ways that you can use organic sounds or organic techniques within your track to kind of give them a bit more life and to kind of get away from that sort of static, just using all plugins and samples that you found on Splice and stuff like that. So the demo track for today sounds like this. So as you heard in the demo, is just a little track that I put together with my old next door neighbor, Dean Hurley. I really like the track, it just never sort of developed into a finished idea. And fun fact, we actually worked on the start of this idea at David Lynch's studio. Dean used to work for David, and I was lucky enough to go over there and work on some music, and he's got a bunch of really cool stuff over there. So as you can hear, we put in some guitars and bits and pieces and just had a little bit of fun messing around with some audio. So as you can hear in the track, or you might have picked up, the main sort of sample that was giving us the groove was this train sample. And this is what I recorded this when I was in Chicago, just playing some shows. And I just kind of had my phone out, being a nerd and just recording bits and pieces, and I thought it kind of sounded cool. And then I went around my house for a couple of days, sort of on and off, just recording bits and pieces. And we've got this little wheel from my bike, just the rubber on a piece of timber. This little glass sort of sound, and got some other little bits and pieces in there. But these organic sounds help kind of drive the direction of the track. You got the train with the groove, and then the other bits and pieces to kind of give it that sort of more real sound, as opposed to just a static sort of using samples that found off Splice, like I said before. So how can we get these techniques in our own track? So I've jumped into Ableton. I really like working in Ableton because it has really good sample manipulation, and just at the end of the day, every DAW has pluses and minuses. I just like working in Ableton for this. And I just have one instance of machine loaded in with just something to work off. So we have just a simple beat and a little melodic element, so we can kind of work off that. Now, for the first thing I want to do is get a train sample, and I want to use that train sample in the same way I used in the demo track to get kind of groove. So I couldn't find the original sample that I recorded on my phone because it was like 10 years ago or something like that. But I just went onto YouTube, awesome, and just grabbed the sights and sounds of Chicago train and subway, and we just have this bit of audio, and it kind of has the same feel to it. So we're going to use this to kind of find a section that we want to use to grab that groove. So let's come in here. We want to warp, and we want a loop. And I want a loop because I kind of want to scroll through and find a section that works for us. So let's pull this down to, we'll go 4 bars. So we want this down as well. There we go. So now we just have one bit that we can scroll through, and you can see up the top it's moving it around. So what we can do we'll come into machine and we will grab an even simpler section of this. It doesn't have any melodic. Now the train is a little bit loud, but we just kind of want to that sounds pretty good. You can hear something in there maybe. I like it down here a little bit more. And I think we're going to cut this down to 2 bars. And let's just find a little bit better. So that's pretty good there. So let's just come in and we can just tighten it up a little bit more. Let's move that over. And I don't want it so tight that it sounds robotic. We just kind of want to just tighten it up a little bit. Maybe move this one over. Almost like a shaker, but we're kind of just giving it, it has a little bit more to it. So I'm just kind of grabbing a couple of these little bits. So you can hear there we've got a little bit of a groove going. Maybe move this over. Move this over. No, I don't like those. It kind of speeds it up and slows it down too much. We'll just go with that for now because we could obviously spend ages on this. So let's come in here. We want to add a little bit more to it. So let's add an audio effect. We're going to just grab a simple EQ. Chuck that on there. And let's come across and let's add some reverb. No delay. And this is the reverb. It's really washed out, but it kind of gives a little bit more atmosphere to it. And then I would just come along and just kind of pull that down in the mix a little bit, even maybe a little bit more. And you can hear there the sort of the imperfection of it kind of gives it its own life, and it helps just kind of add a little bit more atmosphere and just a little bit more, like less perfection within the track. Obviously, I would spend a little bit more time trying to find a loop that kind of has a little bit more groove to it, or just dial this one in a little bit more. But you get the idea of just trying to use something in the real world that has a kind of groove to it to then put that in your track and kind of give it a little bit more. So next up, we are going to use just a ambience sort of sound that I recorded on my phone. So I did record this one just the other day, and I think it works really well. We've got new recording. We can pull this in. And I've just taken out the train sound just for this so we can hear what's going on. And if I bring up the sound here, we want to increase that volume. And then if I solo it out, you can hear we got some sort of birds. Over here we have, where it's like the bigger section, you can hear it playing. But you kind of hear all those bits and pieces. So let's just find a section. Maybe down the back here. This in here was a car going by. So let's go with this one. Cut that there. And again, I just recorded this on my phone. Nothing fancy. I know you can spend a bunch of money. I have a field recorder that I use. But sometimes you don't have that. And sometimes you can't afford that. But 99% of people have a phone, has a microphone on it. Just record those bits and pieces. I think you'll find that you'll get some really nice happy accidents. Now for this, we've got it set to a 16 bar loop. But what I like to do is I would just cut like a 25. And we can just cut this one. So now when you loop that section, now because it's not on a 4-bar section, as it like loops around, you're going to get sort of these, it's going to be not repeating in the same spot every time. So let's play the sound with the rest of the machine track. And what we can do now is, because we have something going on with the sound that's not so sort of rhythmic, we can kind of come in here and we'll go back to that original loop that we've got. And you can hear those birds sort of in the background there. Again, let's put an EQ on there. You can see we've got a lot of low frequency stuff. We want to get rid of that. The birds were angry that day. Well, they might have been happy, I don't know. So we'll come across, we'll add some reverb in there, maybe some of the delay. Now if I this is just the affected sound. And if I pull that down, maybe you can hear little bits coming through every now and then. I would even maybe pull it down just a hair more. If I take it out, can't really hear too much, but just helps add that little bit of interest in the back of your track. Obviously this is not going to work for everything. Might not work too well with sort of club music, but I find that just tracks that you kind of want the listener to kind of find little bits of ear candy in there, this is really good for kind of adding that and giving them something else. So the third thing we're going to look at, and I've harped on this so much and I've done it in a couple other videos, but I wanted to just touch on it because it kind of encompasses in this world, is using found sounds within your track. Now I did a video on the Polyend Tracker Mini where I recorded using the inbuilt mic, and I still have those samples. So we're going to use those in here and show you how there's a quick way that you can kind of generate really cool sort of percussive patterns with just a couple of plugins within Ableton. So let me find where these samples are living. Here, Ableton, you can see I don't really use Ableton too much. Bike samples, samples, processed. And then let's go in here, list. And we've already got them separated here. So if I listen to a couple of these, so I don't really want those melodic sort of sounds or the tonal sounds, I just want those percussive hits. So let's put that out of the way for now. And let's go into drums, drum rack. Let's get these samples over. It's just got all of them. There should be a bunch in there. There might be some that we don't want, but for now, let's chuck them in there. Let it do its thing. Now we've got, oh, here we go. We have all of our samples in there. Now, I've used this plugin before for acid lines, but this free Max user library, this free Max a plugin for generating bass lines is really good for generating patterns with percussive elements. So it's called Sting. We're going to just drag it down into here. If I solo this out, we can just click the face. Oh, that one's a little bit crazy with that. Let's go again. Let's decrease the density. And then let's play it with the rest of the drums. We can kind of get a feel for how it sounds and if we need to decrease the density a little bit more. I think that's pretty good. Surprisingly, you just get a lot of really good happy accents with this. Obviously, we can go in and then start to kind of shape each of the sample, but when you're just kind of coming together with ideas and you kind of want to just use a bunch of different samples, this is really good. Quick tip, I found it on another video on YouTube where someone was using it and I was like, oh, that is really, really good. So again, not my idea, but I thought it was really good and we can use it in this sort of instance. You can hear the birds in the background there for that section. And with a couple of little steps, we've kind of come up with something that is pretty decent. So again, get that reverb. Pull that down a little bit, and then we can pull the actual volume of that down. So there you go, a nice easy way to kind of pull in a bunch of samples and use that free Max plugin by Skinnerbox to kind of help generate different patterns. And the last tip that I wanted to kind of show you is using an LFO to kind of modulate the loop end point, so you can kind of get more variations on the actual sample. So I'll give you an example. I just have this track that I've been working on. It's a little bootleg remix. And I have this found sound just here. So you can hear it's just a normal hit. And then you can hear it's getting ratcheted up. It's the same sound, but I just have the two variations of the LFO. If I come in here, and you can do this in almost all samplers. We have our sample here. So you can see here as it's going, it's pulling in the end point and then kind of ratchets it. And all I've got is the LFO 3 is the one that's doing that modulation. And you can see here, LFO 3, loop endpoint. and then I've just kind of dialed in that amount. And it's a way that you can kind of get a sample that people have heard throughout the track to kind of give a little bit new life, and then it can give you sort of more rhythms within the track, kind of add a little bit more interest. So here we got a ratcheting there. And that's a cool way that you can kind of add just a little bit more interest without sort of going over the top and having to add more sounds and kind of overwhelm the project. So that is about it for today. Some quick tips when coming to using organic sounds within your track. Sampling is your best friend, and just recording samples, finding samples, hitting stuff, recording it with your phone, pulling it in, and then kind of manipulating them. It give you your own sample pack, and you're not going to splice, maybe digging for hours to try and find that one sample. You can kind of use that as a way to kind of generate ideas and get you going. Really listen out for sounds. If you hear a sound that's kind of maybe a little bit rhythmic, you can kind of record that with your phone, use that as a way to kind of get a groove started. Learn your plugins. You can see there with the LFO, sending it to the loop endpoint. If you don't have a kind of a basic understanding of how to modulate stuff and how to use the mod matrix, something like that can be a little bit difficult, but if you kind of learn your plugins, you'll get there. And obviously, movement is your friend. Having stuff that moves in and out of time, or filters and stuff like that, will help you kind of get a more organic sound for your track. So hopefully you got something out of today's video, and until next time, see you later.